Last summer, I placed the order for my bike, the Evo Reckoning V3. It was supposed to be the XT build and was supposed to come with a RockShox Zeb and Super Deluxe coil. But due to parts shortages, what showed up was an XT build with a Fox 38 and a Float X2. Now, this suspension has been great, and I honestly think the black and gold looks really good. But this bike is always spec'd with a coil shock. Every review bike has a coil shock, and well, I like coil shocks, so I really wanted to try one out. Luckily, my friend over at the YouTube channel Trail Dogs MTB has the same bike and a spare Super Deluxe coil laying around that he's kindly loaned me. So I grabbed a stiffer spring to handle my chunk and tossed it on my bike. Alright, so what even is a coil or an air shock? Well, this is a coil shock, and this is probably what most people think of when they hear suspension. Basically, it's the original suspension, just a plain old coil, and then there's a damper and stuff like that inside there, and this provides your suspension. And in the case of a coil shock, this spring is, well, that's your spring. Now in the case of an air shock, those sort of look like this. And as you can see, there is no spring, but the spring is actually air. That's why we call it an air shock, and it's inside here. Now for the most part, the features are more or less the same. Usually there's rebound and damping adjust. But there is one extra feature that an air shock gives you, and that's the ability to adjust how much the shock ramps up. The spring rate, because it's air, isn't linear, and you can put volume reducers inside to make the shock feel harder as it goes through the travel. And that's one reason where a lot of people really like air shocks, is because they are a lot more tunable. And then when you're looking at the coil shock, since there is no volume or air or anything to reduce like that, all you do is have this spring. It has a constant spring rate through all of its travel, and, well, in some cases that's good, in some cases maybe people won't like that. But those are sort of your biggest differences between the two shocks. Now don't get me wrong, there are still quite a few more differences in ride feel and stuff like that, but another one of those big differences is how much these things weigh. The coil shock comes in at 976 grams, and my air shock comes in at 661 grams. So the air shock, and this is sort of a true rule of thumb for most air shocks compared to coil shocks, is that they're also quite a bit lighter. Well, now you might be saying, well, the coil shock is lighter and it's more tunable, so why do we even want a coil shock? Well, let's get it on the bike and let's see how it rides. Alright, so I've got the coil, did the climb. Maybe slightly more bobbing compared to the air shock, but this bike doesn't really bob. Didn't bother to flip the climb switch, didn't really notice. So yeah, coil versus air shock for road climbs. Well, no real difference on this bike. Alright, I gotta go catch Dale. He goes so fast. Let's go downhill. Alright, first real descent with the coil. Haven't had a chance to really tune it per se. But so far so good. Oh, it is quite plush. Oh yeah, it definitely feels like it's moving through the travel just that much easier. I quite like it. Woo. All right, so we did just tech, we did some flow on the coil. And now we're gonna do some steeps. Woohoo! We did. Oh yeah. This wants to. Did I take the ride around? I did. We didn't mean to take the ride around. Whew. Strava. Huh? Huh. All right, so the coil. I think I didn't notice the weight on the climb, and definitely enjoying the plushness. Oh, this way. Ah! So I might see if I can keep this coil. Maybe I'll buy it. Whew. Ooh. So far, I think most of the bikes I've ridden this way definitely have felt better with a coil. I've heard that people who weigh a bit more, like me, tend to get more of that benefit out of the coil. And I have to say, really loving the coil. Oh, yep. Is this rock, is it stable? All right, let's try some jumps. I think when it comes to jumping, coil's gonna feel pretty much the same. This is where the coil really is gonna shine. Just the chunk. Ah. All right, there's some anti-berm around here somewhere. Oh, right there. Whew. Yeah, when it comes to jumps and the coil, pretty much feels the same. It's that kind of these small bumps where they're like just when the coil needs to get out of the way. But yeah, what I'm noticing is the coil just feels like it moves through the travel just a little easier. Well, it's probably because the coil is more linear than the air shock, and ooh, I think there's less friction if I'm saying that right. Ooh. So it just gives a bit of a smoother ride. And I guess the real penalty is the weight. Just keep going?
Oh, sure.
Ah! Ah! Oh yeah, pretty grippy. Well, I guess the downside is the coil might feel a little less poppy. Like when I go to hop, since you are getting that more of that absorption, yeah, it seems maybe a little harder to get the hop going. But this bike is so playful already, it's not bad. Oh! I cased it again.
Yeah, just a little.
Woo! So upside to the coil, nice plush planted feeling. Great small bub, very controlled. Downside, maybe a little less pop and weight. Woo! All right, that was the first ride on the Coil. I'm thinking I might buy it. I like it a lot. Feels quite good on the descent. The only thing I worry about is it does make the bike feel a little less poppy, and having a really playful bike is part of the reason I bought it. So, and the X2, well, that shock is pretty much doing, well, it's doing just fine. So let me know, what do you guys think? Should I keep the Air? Should I go with the Coil? Let me know in the comments. I'll see you guys in the next one.